Koon, Chapter 1, A World Without a Master. For 10 long years, the land had groaned under a fragile and bloody peace. The great cult master, the man who had once united all under his banner of strength and order, had vanished without a trace. In his absence, his mighty clan shattered like dropped porcelain. From the pieces rose 4 powerful, warring factions. The Moonlight Sector, the heart of the old cult, now ruled by the Master's daughter, the wise and gentle Princess Julie. She held the capital, her heart heavy with the loss of her father, her rule a delicate dance of diplomacy and fear. The Skull Collectors, a terrifying legion of raiders led by the ruthless Sad. A man of nightmares, he showed cruelty to all, save for one, Princess Julie, for whom he held a strange, unwavering kindness, born of loyalty to her lost father. Bloodbath, a swarm of assassins who killed without warning or reason. Their leader, Kimmy, was death itself, a shadow with a blade whose heart felt nothing, until it did. Soul's Eater, a mysterious coven deep in the dark woods, where the 3 witches, Gina, Melissa, and Sammy, practiced black arts that could twist a man's soul. Watching these factions from their mountain fortresses and sacred temples were the great martial clans. The Shaolin monks of Grandmaster Yu, whose fingers knew the body's secret pressure points, able to heal with a touch or kill with a poke. His 5 elite students, Lu, Li, Tin, Young, and Me, were warriors without equal. Sword Mountain, a citadel of gleaming steel under Grandmaster Wok. His 10 greatest disciples, including the fierce husband and wife warriors Cliff and Letha, were said to be unbeatable with a blade in hand. The Homeless Clan, a vast, ragged army of 10,000, led by the cunning Bo, called Dirty Dog by his enemies. They fought for no flag but gold, their loyalty bought and sold like common goods. Chapter 2, The Storm Called Koon. Into this fractured world came a hurricane of ambition and violence named Koon. He was a villain, a killer without peer, known as the undisputed elite ultimate warrior. His sword tasted the blood of entire villages. He burned fields and homes, and from the ashes of the clans he destroyed, he would take a trophy, the wife of the champion he had slain. He sought 2 things, to find the missing cult master and to prove himself the greatest swordsman to ever live. He believed the first would inevitably lead to the second. His rampage was legend. Chapter 3, The Siege of Sword Mountain. The air atop Sword Mountain was thin and sharp, tasting of ice and honed steel. The citadel of Grandmaster Wok was a fortress of tradition and unparalleled blade mastery, a place where the very cliffs seemed to be carved from the edges of swords. They believed themselves untouchable. Then Koon arrived. He did not come with an army. He came alone, a single dark speck against the white snow of the ascent. His demand echoed off the stone walls, chilling the blood of the disciples more than the alpine wind. Send out your best. I will break your mountain and take your pride. The 10 greatest disciples, led by the husband and wife duo Cliff and Letha, met him in the sky courtyard, a vast plateau overlooking the clouds. Kenny, Letha's brother and one of their most fierce, stood at the front, his hand already on the hilt of his great sword. "You are a fool to come here, killer," Kenny snarled. "This is hallowed ground. Your blood will freeze before it hits the stone." Koon said nothing. He simply drew his blade, a simple, unadorned length of steel that seemed to drink the light. His silence was more insulting than any boast. The battle began not with a duel, but with an avalanche. The 10 disciples moved as one, a whirlwind of gleaming death. Swords shot toward Koon from every angle, a technique known as the 1,000 blossoming petals, designed to overwhelm and shred any single opponent. Koon did not block. He flowed. He became a phantom, his body swaying and twisting between the blades with impossible precision. His own sword was a blur, each movement a deafening clang as he parried a dozen strikes in a single second, sparks flying like angry hornets. The sound was a continuous shrieking symphony of metal. Cliff and Letha separated from the group, their synergy perfect. Cliff's attacks were massive, overhead chops meant to break bones and swords alike. Letha's were precise and swift, aimed at tendons and arteries, the silent viper's kiss. They came at him from both sides, a pincer move that had felled armies. Koon dropped to one knee, avoiding Cliff's decapitating swing, and thrust his sword upward, deflecting Letha's thrust. The force of the impacts shook the ground beneath them. He kicked out, catching Cliff in the chest and sending the larger man stumbling back, then used the momentum to spin and slash at Letha, forcing her to leap away. Chapter 4, Kenny Battle of Honors. "Enough of this," Kenny roared. He charged, his great sword held high, channeling his chi. The blade glowed with a white-hot energy. Mountain splitter strike! He brought the colossal sword down with the force of a landslide. Koon didn't dodge, he met it. He swung his own blade in a perfect vertical arc. It was not a technique of brute force, but of absolute precision and impossible speed. The two swords met with a cataclysmic boom that echoed across the range. The energy from Kenny's strike didn't vanish. It exploded outward. A colossal crack, deep and thunderous, tore through the heart of the mountain itself. The very plateau they stood on shuddered violently, and with a groan of shearing rock, a gigantic fissure split the peak of Sword Mountain in two. One half of the sacred courtyard broke away and slid into the clouds below, taking ancient temples and training grounds with it. The remaining disciples stared in utter horror. Their home, their unshakable fortress, had been broken. Shaken but enraged, the 10 disciples regrouped. They formed a circle around Koon, their swords pointed inward. In unison, they began to chant, their voices rising into a harmonic hum. The thousands of swords embedded in the mountain's walls and armories, every blade ever forged there, began to vibrate and shudder. Then, they tore free from their scabbards and mountings. A storm of steel filled the air, a swirling, shrieking tornado of thousands of blades all flying toward Koon. This was the ultimate technique of Sword Mountain, the Infinity Sword Strike. It was said no living thing could survive it. Koon stood at the eye of the storm. He smiled for the first time. This was a challenge. He began to move his sword not to block, but to conduct. He weaved a shield of energy around himself so fast it became a solid dome of light. The thousands of blades shattered against it, exploding into shards of molten metal that rained down like deadly hail. The clangor was deafening, a continuous world-ending ring of steel on energy. But he wasn't just defending. He was learning the rhythm of the storm. With a final guttural cry, Koon thrust his free hand into the air. He wasn't just a swordsman. He was a master of energy, a student of the deepest mysteries. The shattered fragments of the thousands of swords, the very vaporized metal hanging in the air, coalesced above him. He summoned the latent energy of the storm he had created, drawing the electricity from the thin, charged air. The shards of metal fused together, crackling with blue-white lightning, forming into the shape of a colossal, serpentine dragon made of pure lightning and steel. With a final, contemptuous swing of his blade, Koon commanded it downward. The dragon of swords and thunder plunged into the midst of the 10 disciples. The resulting explosion of light and force blinded everyone on the mountain. When the light faded, 8 of the 10 disciples were down, broken and unconscious amidst the scorched stone. Only Cliff and Letha remained standing, protecting each other, their robes smoking, their faces etched with terror and defiance. Koon walked through the devastation, his footsteps the only sound in the sudden silence. He ignored them. His eyes were on Kenny, who was struggling to rise, his greatsword lying broken beside him. "There is no honor in this," Kenny spat, blood on his lips. "Honor is a story the weak tell themselves," Koon replied, his voice cold. He looked past Kenny to where Kenny's wife Sokon watched in horror from a balcony. "But there are spoils." He ended Kenny with a thrust so fast it was over before the body hit the ground. He didn't even watch him fall. His eyes were already locked on Sokon. The siege was over. The mountain was broken. Its greatest were defeated. And as Koon ascended the steps to claim his prize, the legend of the undisputed elite ultimate killer was written not in ink, but in blood, lightning, and the split stone of a fallen fortress. The descent from the shattered peak of Sword Mountain was made in silence. Koon walked ahead, a dark silhouette against the setting sun, the scent of ozone and blood still clinging to him. Behind him, a few paces back, walked Sokon, a married woman who witnessed her husband deceased. Chapter 5. The Prize and the Pact. The silence that hung between Koon and Sokon was thick, charged with the unspoken aftermath of death and conquest. They made camp in a small clearing at the edge of the whispering woods, the ancient trees seeming to lean in to observe the strange pair. Koon built a fire, his movements efficient and devoid of wasted energy. He was a man who had just shattered a mountain and claimed a queen, yet he showed no triumph, only a relentless, simmering intensity. Sokon did not huddle away from him. She sat across the fire, not as a prisoner, but as an observer. She watched the play of firelight on the hard planes of his face, the way his hands, which had just wielded world-breaking power, now calmly fed kindling to the flames. The memory of Kenny's fall was not a source of grief, but a door closing. A new, terrifying, and exhilarating door was opening before her. "You fight without honor," she stated, her voice not an accusation, but a clinical observation. Koon's eyes, reflecting the flames, lifted to meet hers. "Honor is a chain. I chose to be free of it." "You fight to win," she amended, a spark of understanding in her own gaze. "My husband fought for a code. You fight for a result. Today, your result was absolute." This intrigued him. He had expected fear, tears, resistance. He found instead a kindred spirit, a mind that saw the world in terms of strength and weakness, victory and defeat. "And what is your result?" he asked, his voice a low, gravelly sound. "I am alive," she said simply. "The strong survive, the weak do not." She rose, a graceful movement that belied the turmoil within. She walked around the fire until she stood before him, looking up into his face. "You didn't just take a wife today. You took the best Sword Mountain had to offer. You have proven your strength. I will not waste my spirit mourning a man who is proven weaker." Her words were a key turning in the lock of his isolation. She was offering him not just her body, but her will. Her submission was not one of fear, but of conscious choice, a warrior pledging allegiance to a greater power. Koon reached out, his fingers, calloused and strong, tracing the line of her jaw. It was not a caress of tenderness, but one of assessment and possession. "You understand what it means to belong to me?" "I understand what it means to belong to strength," she countered, her voice dropping to a whisper. She did not flinch. She leaned into his touch, her own hand coming up to rest on his wrist, not to push him away, but to feel the power thrumming beneath his skin. "Show me." That was all the invitation he needed. He pulled her to him, and his mouth found hers in a kiss that was nothing like the cautious, respectful kisses of her marriage. This was acclaiming. It was fierce, demanding, and tasted of ash and power. Sokon did not submit passively. She met his ferocity with a fire of her own, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. Their coming together there on the bedrolls by the fire was a continuation of the battle on the mountain, a raw, primal clash of two powerful wills. It was not gentle. It was a contest of strength and surrender, each touch a negotiation, each gasp a testament to the shocking intensity of their connection. The cold, calculating part of Sokon's mind was silenced, overwhelmed by a wave of pure, physical sensation she had never known existed. Koon was a man of immense control, but in this, he was as relentless as the storm he embodied. He was not trying to please her, he was taking his prize, and in the taking, he was unlocking a depth of pleasure that was as terrifying as it was exquisite. And then, something in Sokon broke. The proud sword maiden, the calculating survivor, was shattered by a wave of feeling so powerful it stole her breath. A moan, ripped from a place deep within her, escaped her lips. Her carefully maintained control evaporated. "Please," she gasped, the word foreign on her tongue. It was not a word of begging for mercy, but for more. Her nails dug into his back, her hips rising to meet his, no longer a participant in a negotiation, but a supplicant to the sensation he was wringing from her. "Don't stop, please." Her begging seemed to fuel him further. He drove them both toward a precipice, and when the climax finally, violently, overtook them, it was not a quiet release. It was a silent, shattering convulsion that left them both breathless and trembling, the world having narrowed down to the space of their bodies and the dying embers of the fire. In the profound silence that followed, lying in the circle of his arms, Sokon felt the final vestiges of her old life fall away. She had not been conquered, she had been converted. The seed of their son was planted that night not just in her womb, but in the fertile ground of her absolute, chosen surrender to a power she now worshipped. She was his prize, and she would spend the rest of her life ensuring he never for a second regretted claiming her. Kenny had been strong, a master of the sword, a loyal disciple, but he was a man of tradition, of rules. Koon was a force of nature. He did not follow rules, he erased them. In the brutal calculus of their world, Koon was the apex. And Sokon, daughter of a smith, wife of a warrior, understood power. Chapter 6. Dirty Dog. The next morning, as a mist clung to the trees, a figure emerged from the woods. It was Bo, the dirty dog, his clothes ragged, a nervous, slimy smile on his face. He had been shadowing them, waiting for his moment. Great one, a magnificent display, truly. Bo bowed deeply, his eyes darting between Koon and Sokon. The tales do not do you justice. You have acquired a truly magnificent prize. His leer was obvious. Koon's hand went to his sword. You are testing my patience, dog. Instead, he met Koon alone, with a chest of gold and a map. Great warrior, Bo said, his voice a wheedling rasp. Why waste your immense talent on my vermin? We are not worthy of your blade, but I can offer you something more valuable than our lives. He kicked the chest open, revealing a fortune in gold. And information. Koon's cold eyes showed no interest in the gold. Speak. Bo pointed a grimy finger at the map. You seek the cult master? These old clans? He sneered. The Sholin monks, the fools on Sword Mountain. They hoard secrets. They speak in whispers of the old ways. If the master is alive, they would know. Break them, and you will find your answers. My clan is beneath you. Let us be your eyes and ears instead. Let us profit from the chaos you sow. Koon looked at the vast, hungry horde of the homeless clan. They were not a challenge. They were a tool. He took the map. Your lives are yours, Koon stated. For now, be my shadows. Tell me everything you see and hear. If you lie to me, I will not kill you. I will burn every coin you have and leave you to starve. Bo bowed deeply, a cynical smile on his face. He had sold his loyalty to save his skin and turn a profit, a transaction he perfectly understood. Koon left the camp, the vast army of the homeless clan, now an unwitting extension of his will. The whispers of his coming grew louder, now carried on 10,000 tongues. He was no longer just a killer, he was a plague, and he had his first carriers. Chapter 7. The Unfolding Petal. The air on the high balcony was thin and cold, carrying the sounds of chaos from below. Grandmaster Wok stood like a stone sentinel, his face grim as he watched Koon carve a path of beautiful destruction through the heart of Sword Mountain. His style was ferocious, yet it held a strange, deadly grace that chilled Wok to his core. It was familiar in a way that tugged at the edges of his oldest, most painful memories. Beside him, Sky, his young prodigy, age 13, watched with calm, analytical eyes. His anger gives him strength, but it makes him predictable, Sky observed, his voice steady. His offense has no patience. His defense is an afterthought. I could end it. 5 moves. Wok nodded slowly, his mind racing, pieces of a terrible puzzle beginning to click into place. He had not yet spoken the truth to Sky. The revelation was too great, too dangerous to unveil before its time. Watch closely, Wok said, his voice low. There is a rhythm to his chaos, a pattern I have not seen in many years. Below, Koon fought 2 senior disciples. He moved with a fluid, brutal efficiency, disarming one with a flick of his wrist. Then, as the second lunged, Koon performed a specific, twisting parry, a move that flowed into a circular, slashing counterattack that seemed to bloom from the defense itself. It was not a standard Sword Mountain technique. It was something else, something older. Grandmaster Wok's breath caught in his throat. His eyes widened. That move. He knew it. It was called the Petal Unfolds. It was a foundational technique from the secret book of the flower's blossom. a technique he had only ever seen one man perform with such effortless, deadly beauty. Ku. The memory struck him like a physical blow. Ku, his brightest student, his almost son, practicing that very move in this very courtyard, the air humming with his potential. The memory was followed by a darker one, the violated vault, the torn pages of the sacred book, and Ku's desperate flight into the night with his dark sorcerers. And then another memory, one he had locked away, Ku, in a rare moment of vulnerability, speaking of his infant son, his firstborn. Wak's head snapped toward Koon, the same fierce eyes, the same set of the jaw, the same unnatural, breathtaking talent. Gods above, Wak thought, his heart hammering against his ribs. It cannot be. The boy, Ku's boy. He looked from Koon's raging, familiar form to Sky's calm, waiting one. The truth was a storm in his mind. He had to be sure. Sky, Wak said, his voice tight with urgency. The invader, his technique. It is not random. It is a perversion of our own highest art. He uses a broken version of a style you know in its true form. He quickly outlined the 5 moves, the true, complete counter from the flower's blossom technique. First, the rooted tree. When he uses that slashing bloom, do not meet its force. Plant your feet and use the stem's stability. Let his strike slide harmlessly off your blade. He will be overextended. Second, the clinging vine. Your blade must stick to his, following its motion, tangling his rhythm. This is also from the stem, a defense that confuses. Third, the pruning shear. As his flow is broken, your counter-strike is not a thrust, but a sharp, precise break across his sword arm. It will numb his limb. This is the stem harming to protect. Fourth, the falling leaf. He will be open. A simple, graceful sweep of your foot will take his legs. This is the transition. Fifth, the awakened bloom. As he falls, your point will find his heart. It will be over. He knows the flower's beauty, but not its thorns. You will show him both. Sky listened, absorbing the instructions with a frightening, placid intensity. He saw the sequence perfectly. But Wak's final words were not about technique. He gripped Sky's arm, his eyes burning with a dawning, horrific realization. Sky, that move he used. The petal unfolds. I have only ever seen one man use it. A man who was like a son to me. A man who had a son of his own. He looked down at Koon, his voice dropping to a whisper. I believe this may be him, Ku's boy. The revelation hung in the air between them. The invader was no longer a faceless enemy. He was a ghost from a tragic past, a lost heir returning not with a claim, but with a sword. Sky looked down at the raging fighter, his brother, and saw the 5 moves not just as a way to win, but as a key to a locked door. The fight was no longer about defending the mountain. It was about confronting a legacy.